It's Sunday, September 2nd, 2007. You're moving at the speed of creativity with Wesley Fryer, narrowcasting from Edmond, Oklahoma. Good afternoon, and welcome to another podcast recording from the 2007 EncycloMedia Conference held in Oklahoma City the last week of August 2007. This recording was a presentation that I shared about the Oklahoma Digital Centennial Project, which is a collaborative effort by Enid Public Schools, supported by AT&T and a variety of other school districts throughout the state of Oklahoma. We've also had support from Discovery Education and other entities, and it is a wonderful opportunity for teachers as well as students to not only learn but engage and practice in what I think is an essential skill of the 21st century, and that is digital storytelling. So we had 3 different facilitator trainings last school year and are going to be having 3 different facilitator trainings this year, and are very excited to be partnering with the Oklahoma Heritage Association. And you'll hear Aaron from the OHA share a little bit about the association and its mission, which is to tell and preserve the history of Oklahoma through the voices of its people. So without further ado, here is the presentation from EncycloMedia last week on Thursday from the Cox Convention Center in downtown Oklahoma City. Well, hello, and welcome to our session on the Digital Centennial Project. Anybody nervous about that video that I showed at the beginning? Anybody nervous about kids having access to the global stage to be able to publish their thoughts, their ideas? What are they going to say? What are they going to say? This is Erin from the Oklahoma Heritage Association, and she's going to be talking a little bit, and she's got some handouts. There should have been, hopefully, a 4-page handout that you received, front and back, that says Oklahoma Digital Centennial Project, and we have more of those in the back. And then we also have 2 other handouts. One has my contact information, and it says Teach Digital at the top, and I am the education advocate for AT&T and provide free professional development for schools related to technology integration, engaged learning, and lots of things, but digital storytelling is my favorite thing to help schools with. I also do talk to schools about E-Rate, and if you or somebody at your school handles the E-Rate program, which is a very great program to bring internet connectivity and these connections to our schools, I have a flyer about the 10 seminars that are going to be held around the state at the end of the month. But I want to talk to you about something that I consider to be far more even exciting than E-Rate, and I want to talk to you about magic. Because really, I'm struck by this. I was thinking about it last night as I worked on my computer at home, wirelessly connected to this internet, moving data between who knows where, in distant lands somewhere, so that people could connect and listen to it. And I thought, technology truly is like magic. It's just that we have more words for it in different contexts, okay? But it truly is amazing, and it's powerful. And if you think about magic, one of the things that, when we read science fiction, or I'm a big Harry Potter fan and finished my wife finished book 7 probably a week before I did, but one of the things that entrances us about that is the capacity and the capability to do more than anyone would ever think we're capable of. And the Digital Centennial Project represents a lot of things in my view, but one of the things it really represents is an attempt not only to preserve the history of our great state through digital storytelling, and we have been telling stories forever, right? But using digital tools is a little bit new. But we're also talking about empowering individuals in their communities, empowering you as a librarian or a teacher, empowering your students, empowering the folks that live in your community to not just create something that we get a grade and we put it in that circular file and we never see it again, but to create and share stories that can be enjoyed and celebrated not only across the state of Oklahoma, but literally across the entire planet. And I think we hear terms like YouTube and MySpace and TeacherTube and these other resources, and we may not fully appreciate what it really means to have access to global distribution. And so I think there is something that's really magical and powerful about that. And that's the second thing that I'm going to talk about is power. You know, power fascinates us. I have a 3-year-old, right? And right now we're going through, I have 3 kids. I have a 9-year-old who's just started 4th grade, a 7-year-old who's in 2nd, and then my 3-year-old who's almost 4. And we're going through, you know, some issues right now with their friends that relate to power. Some of the stuff we're going to talk about today, I think, terrifies many school board members. It terrifies many adults. What? These kids can publish? These kids can, you know, share their voice? We can't allow that. Well, regardless or irrespective of what the policy may be in your local school district, students are, as we heard Quinn Arana talk at the OTA luncheon today, using media to participate. And one of the things I think we need to do as educators, and I'll talk about this more in my session tomorrow on social networking and cyberbullying prevention and internet safety, is provide a forum for our students to constructively participate in the creation and sharing of media and develop a host of literacy skills that we've been wanting them to, you know, have at school for many, many years. But now it has a digital face, and there's just a lot of potential here. And I'll talk tomorrow about a new report that just came out from Grunwald Research. Quinn referenced it today in his presentation, that the National School Boards Association has just released. eSchool News wrote it up 2 weeks ago, and it talks about the opportunities that we have here. But let's talk about this, the magical power of the human voice. I'm going to play you 2 examples today during the session of digital stories. The first one is going to actually be my children, and that's not exactly tied to the Centennial. The second one's going to be an example of a digital story for the Centennial. But I want to make this point, and if I show you something and you experience it, you'll have a much greater likelihood of remembering it than if I just tell you, oh, the voice is magical. It truly is. Your students, irrespective of their age, have great capacity to communicate their perceptions of things and their understandings of things with their voice. And when we talk about digital storytelling, in many cases we are talking about them writing a script and going through the writing process. Hello? Is that important? Of course. But the motivation changes when the audience changes. But I really think as we consider schools and we talk about assessment, Ellen Drucker with Tulsa Libraries is right now doing a session about assessment that I'm sorry to be missing. But we need to be utilizing these technologies to assess. And in many ways, we can get a very authentic picture of what students know when we ask them to talk and retell their learning. So who's heard of this tool, VoiceThread? Anybody heard of this before? There are a lot of different tools that are available and out there for schools to use, for just individuals to use. VoiceThread is a really neat one. It's free, first off. Second off, you just take pictures and then a microphone and you narrate those pictures. For schools, it's wonderful because the teacher can moderate the comments that are coming in. And so you can individually control what is published and what is shared. And this can either be done privately or it can be done on a public website. But again, for schools, I'd always encourage you to moderate. Well, I'd like to just share just a short little video that actually my 3 children helped make for my dad, whose birthday was last week. And the reason I want to share this is to make this point about the power of the human voice and the magic that's there.
This is a picture taken after Grammy's funeral. I'm so glad I get to know you better than I got to know her. And it's, even though it's kind of fun to have everybody together. Well, Kat, I'm glad you're leading our family because you're such a loving grandbuddy. Well, I'm not in this picture, so I wasn't here yet, because I was in my mama's tummy.
So, a little bit of levity from a 3-year-old, but I think that there's a lot of different examples that I could show. That's just one that's a recent one. To talk about the power of the human voice, right? We hear a great deal about user-created media, and most of what we hear about in the press has to do with fear and death. It has to do with internet predators. It gives you a perception that as soon as an instant messaging program is running on your computer, or as soon as you visit Facebook or MySpace, suddenly predators just jump right out and solicit you. The research actually shows that what puts kids at risk more than anything else is when they go online to talk about sex. And when they go talk about sex and they go places where people are talking about sex, that puts them at risk more than anything else. So we're not here to just focus on social networking, but we are going to be talking about the power of media to communicate and the value that it brings to our lives. And the invitation really is not just for you and yourself to take this information and create a story or just access the stories that other people have made, but it's to go ahead and invite your students to help create as well. I want to share one more thought, and then I'm going to I'll give you my 3 big points of the presentation. And I found this really compelling. There's a gentleman named Tim Tyson, and he was the closing keynote speaker at the National Education Computing Conference in Atlanta this year. Tim's been the principal of Mabry Middle School in Marietta, Georgia for the last 7 years. And you may recall that Marietta, or Cobb County as the district is called, almost had the largest laptop initiative in the entire country. And some truly powerful things have been happening at Mabry, and Tim is the person who actually suggested to their school board that they do this crazy thing of giving laptops to all students to empower them for the 21st century. And this was one of the essential questions that he asked at the Building Learning Communities Conference in Boston, and that he also connected with at NEC. When does meaningfulness begin? Right? When does it begin? Does it begin after you graduate from high school? Does it when you graduate from college, are you then able to make a meaningful contribution? Is it when you're married, when you have kids? What Tim said is that meaningfulness begins today, and it's a choice. And he also said that meaningfulness comes from connectedness. So one of the things that we need to do, and if we were going to raise hands, I bet that all of us as teachers, educators, librarians, whatever our hat is, we would agree we want to help students have meaningful experiences. We want kids to leave our classrooms different than they came in. Otherwise, we just wasted our time. And if we want to have meaningful experiences, we need to look at the connections that we make, and we also need to look at what we're doing. And creating digital stories is a very compelling thing. You and I have probably seen kids do PowerPoints where they just read them, and there were more, flying bullets and sound effects and all kinds of things to distract than, you or I could have probably managed to put into the presentation. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about presentations that really get in depth, that address important issues, and that really communicate. And I don't know, did anyone go to the Walden Media presentation about Prince Caspian? Powerful reasons for us to use media. Okay? If I'm not using images to try and teach, in some ways I'm really not serious about teaching you, right? Because I'll skip. If I put an image up, does anybody know how much faster the human brain processes an image than text? Anybody know a ballpark figure? Would that be an important thing to know as a teacher? Yeah. Lynn Burmark, who's with the Thornburg Center, says it's 60,000 times faster. Right? Why is that true? Well, as a Westerner who is basically mainly reading and understanding English. And you probably, you may speak another language, but unless you're reading Chinese, or another language that starts differently, we start at the top and we go, left to right, and we go down the page. That's how we read. When you look at an image, no one tells your brain you have to start in the upper left corner. You begin to process that, any way that you want to. So today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the history of the Oklahoma Digital Centennial Project, tell you a little bit about the tools, a little bit about the partners, and most importantly, how to get involved. And I'm going to hand this microphone here in a little bit over to Aaron to tell you a little bit about the Oklahoma Heritage Association. And do we have a representative of the Metropolitan Libraries here? Do we have? Okay. Did you bring anything on the Oklahoma Voices? No, you're not. Well, okay. I'm going to tell you a little bit about the Oklahoma Voices project, because this initiative. Let me tell you how it started. How to find us. The most important handout you have is the 4-page document that's front and back. All right. Mike King, who's the director of technology for Enid Public Schools, really was the genesis of this project. And if you Google, doesn't Google make you feel powerful? It should, right? Okay, I know I can find that. Let me Google it. So Google Oklahoma Digital Centennial, and you'll get over 250,000 hits. But the first one is going to be the correct one in this case, and it is to EPS, Enid Public Schools Oklahoma Digital Centennial Project. So that's going to take you to the website. The project began with some technology integration training that Enid was offering regionally with Discovery Education, and it was called 3 Days of Discovery. And last summer, fall, I guess, Mike and I were visiting, talking about our centennial and saying, why don't we have a digital centennial project? The need for teachers to come together for professional development is an abiding one, right? And so the 3 days of training that they were doing, which focused a lot on United Streaming, a lot on the Discovery Education tools, Google tools like Google Earth and things like that, we could use some of that focus and a focus on creating media, but we could look at Oklahoma history and invite both teachers as well as students to create digital stories. So that's kind of the genesis of the project. There are a lot of partners, and your handout kind of gives you some background and detail, and I won't read through all that, but we've had somewhere, I want to say, between 15 and 20, maybe even more than that. If you've read, you may be able to correct me on it. School district representatives participate. We had 3 different what we call facilitator trainings last year in the school year. We had 1 in the fall and 2 in the spring. And last year, these were all held in Enid. This year, they're going to be held in 3 different locations. Our October session is going to be held right here in Oklahoma City with the Oklahoma Heritage Association. The November session will be up in Edmond at the University of Central Oklahoma's College of Education. And the 3rd session will be at Altus at Western Oklahoma State College. I'm not listing all the partners here. This is a sampling. We tried to get a grant last year with Oklahoma Heritage Association, and it was probably my fault as far as the deadlines. We didn't get our stuff together, or I didn't get our stuff together soon enough. But what we did find was there is a very close match between the mission of Oklahoma Heritage Association and what we would like to do with this project, which is encourage Oklahomans to tell the story of our state through its people, to listen, and to also go out and become historical archivists, right? Because there is Oklahoma history all around you, your neighbors, your parents, if your grandparents are still alive, you have folks in your communities that have stories. So one of the big issues to deal with in any kind of project like this is how are you going to regulate what gets up on the website? Anyone ever seen anything inappropriate on a website at school? Of course not. It's all filtered. No, it's still possible, right? And in many of our schools, YouTube is blocked. Why? Because there's some inappropriate stuff that's there. There's some pretty good stuff that's up there too. If you're not aware of teachertube.com, that's something that has come out where it is strictly for education, and individuals can upload things and they'll flag it if it's inappropriate. it's interesting. When you get into talking about inappropriate content, sometimes that's not something that would be considered lewd. It could also be something that's not curricularly appropriate. That they've gotten into some of those kinds of things where some districts, evolution and creation issues. But how would we navigate this? If we want to allow people to upload content, how would you do it? And the solution that Mike devised was facilitator-moderated media file posting. What does that mean? Well, it means that if you or someone in your school district has participated in the 3-day Oklahoma Digital Centennial training, you're sort of given a key to the archive, and you're able to upload content that your students have created into this database that others can access. And of course, we talk about copyright and intellectual property issues, and the fact that we want to create things. I'll talk more about this in my session tomorrow about Creative Commons, that to the greatest degree, and it has to be a total degree, like if you have one picture that's copyrighted, if you have one 5-second audio clip from a commercial CD, that renders the entire story what? Not legally publishable on the World Wide Web if you don't have permission from those folks. So there's a lot of issues that we talk about, but that really is one of the good carrots of this project, is that you have access to publish these resources. One of the things that we're going to hopefully do a better job of this year is follow-up, because research tells us that professional development like this basically doesn't work. Okay? I'm probably not going to make a huge impact on a lot of you, but if you're brought into a community and a opportunity that you have on a continuing basis to work with other educators, and we follow up and I check with you, Mary, how are you doing? Do you need some assistance? We're getting together in 2 weeks. That's our deadline. Do you have your story together? What do you need? The dynamic is much different. And so what we're hoping to do is really build a community, not just one-shot training that we sit and forget, which is what happens a lot. So if there's one address that I would encourage you to write down, besides knowing that you can Google for our address, that Enid site is pretty long, it's this one, which is the Celebrate Oklahoma Ning. Has anybody been into a Ning social network? Anybody ever been in one of those? Does social networking make anybody nervous? Okay. I just showed a video in my morning session called Social Networking in Plain English, and I'm not going to take time to show it today or during this session. But basically, we use social networks all the time. Social networks are how things get done. Social networks is how I got this job. I knew somebody. Okay? Social networks is how I went to my second school after I was a 4th grade teacher. It's actually how I got my job as a 4th grade teacher, because my cooperating teacher knew a principal, and that was a face-to-face social network. Many times the connections we have are hidden, and so social networks help us see those connections. And so this social network has been set up to allow educators across the state and even out of the state, if they would be interested in celebrating our centennial and celebrating Oklahoma, to learn about new kinds of events. Let me give you an example. The last blog post I just put up is about the Chisholm Trail. Anybody know about the Chisholm Trail reenactment that starts this month of September? I am excited about that. What? They're going to start at the Red River and they're going to take 450 cattle all the way across the state of Oklahoma to Caldwell, Kansas? Oh my gosh! Is that coming close to my house? Would that be significant for students to possibly go and see? Take a digital camera? By the way, anybody bring a cell phone that has a digital camera on it? Wow! Powerful technology right in your pocket. Your students can archive some of that, could make a digital story about that, could share their experiences. Do you think that's something they'll remember? You think they'd be jazzed if the story they told about the reenactment of the Chisholm Trail got seen all over the state of Oklahoma and maybe over the planet? Think that might excite them? Yes, it would. So how do you learn about that stuff? How do you network? Well, one way is to be in a social network that's talking about these kinds of things. Let's talk a little bit about tools. Anybody like free software tools? You know why I like free software tools? First off, let me say I like powerful technology tools that just work. Okay, I don't like blue screens of death. I don't like viruses and malware. That's one of the reasons I use my Mac all the time, because there are no malware programs for the Mac. Audacity is a free program, and I like to avoid the yabbits with teachers. Do you have yabbits in your building? Yeah, but we don't have that money. Yeah, but I don't have that time. Yeah, but you fill in the blanks. Now, I can't give you more time, And I do like that idea that someone I heard recently, your time and attention are the most critical, and not critical is not the right word, maybe some of the most valuable things that you have, right? I'm honored that you're here paying attention to these ideas, because you don't get any more time or attention back, right? So I can't give you more time, but there are remarkably powerful tools now that are free. So whether you run a Mac or you have a Windows computer, or even if your district's really progressive looking at Linux, this is a free program. Again, you can just Google Audacity, and that is the first website that's going to come up, and it allows us to record our voices. How powerful is that? It can be hugely powerful. Am I saying that right? That may not be grammatically correct. It can be magical. I wish I had had a recorder like this. I put a little recorder onto my iPod to record this session today so I can share this as a podcast later. I wish I'd had that when my grandmother in Lubbock was still alive. Okay, she grew up in Louisiana. She grew up in a town called Belcher. She showed me pictures. I had a chance. I moved to Lubbock actually in 92, 93, I guess, for pilot training, and I was in the Air Force, and I got out of the Air Force and stayed to become a school teacher. I had some great years with my grandmother. Gosh darn it, I never recorded her telling stories. And you know, when that person's gone, their voice is gone. They may have written some things down, but in her case, she wasn't a writer. I wish I had recorded her stories. So at a real personal level, I know this is compelling. I know this is powerful. And I know one of the things we haven't done much in schools with technology is let the kids touch it. 99% of our schools are wired. We spend over $20 billion in our country on E-rate. You probably have a computer in your room to do grades and email. Has your practice changed that much? For most teachers, no. So by inviting students to participate in a project and use the technology to create a story, we're talking about powerful, magical ingredients. Who's used PhotoStory? Okay? Free program if you have Windows XP. Do you have to have Windows XP? No. Audacity will work on your 2000 system, on your Mac. I didn't put a screenshot of GarageBand up here. But the tools are there, and they're available for free. VoiceThread is another example that's up there. iMovie is a tool that's software on the Macintosh that's free, and I didn't put a screenshot of Movie Maker. But there are tools, and they are accessible. In fact, if they're not already on your computer system at school, with the support of your principal, if they understand this project and what we want to do, whoever is responsible for letting software get installed, we can help talk them into that. Because we're not talking about stuff that they're going to have to buy. And we're not talking about stuff that is just, shareware that Jose, in some country somewhere else has developed that has malware on it or something. So, Google Earth. Any of you use Google Earth? Wonderful tool, right? Free. Great way to make connections. In fact, before I started the session, I was in Google Earth. As one of the things we can do in the project, I think I'll maybe get to it, is you can click on a map of Oklahoma and then you can explore through KML or KMZ files where these stories happened. And you can get a summary and then you can click. So it's making that geographic connection across the whole state. A lot of people know about Google Earth, which is at earth.google.com. Not everybody, knows about Google for Educators. And there are just a lot of educational specific resources. Google's starting to offer Google Teaching Academies. And I don't have enough of these, but if you want to grab one of the blogs that I contribute to on a periodic basis is the Infinite Thinking Machine, which is Google's education blog. And it's just a great place, again, to network with teachers, get ideas, and also see how these tools are used specifically for education. Let me tell you a little bit about Flickr, and then I'm going to turn it over to Aaron to talk a little bit. Has anybody used Flickr before? All right. Flickr is a website that is blocked in most of our school districts. Why? Because if you put in bikini in Flickr, guess what? You're going to see people wearing bikinis. That's also true of Google and pretty much any other search engine that's on the internet. Flickr is a powerful tool for social networking and collaboration. And in this case, we are using Flickr to celebrate the centennial. And we have created a group called the Oklahoma Digital Centennial Project. You can go to flickr.com. Notice there's not an ER there. It's just FLICKR. And then if you put in group/OK100 for Oklahoma 100 years, you'll go to the project. Notice a couple things about this. Number one, there's 286 pictures in this pool. Notice also, I didn't contribute any of these. This doesn't say W. Fryer. That's my username. At the time I took the screenshot, there are 35 members, and it says there are 2 pending pictures. What does that mean? They're not visible yet. Why? We have moderation turned on. Good idea if we're going to have students turning in pictures to turn on moderation? Of course. So anytime we're talking about using blogs or using a thing like VoiceThread that lets comments come in, we're always going to want to moderate, I would think, in our litigious United States society. If you look at what educators in Australia and Canada and other places are doing, it's a little different, but the litigious culture there, the legal culture is a little bit different. We don't want to be embarrassed with a picture somebody's submitted here as a joke. So it says 2 pending. So an administrator, of which I am one, moderate this. Wow, these look like some compelling pictures of Tulsa that we might like in our project? Sure. So I clicked approve, and now they're in the photo pool. Also, you have an opportunity if you are, I don't know if you have, maybe you can just be in the group. I don't know if you have, I said administrators, but I think maybe anybody, I think it's administrators. We can invite folks to join. So if you'd like to, after going through our training, be an administrator for this account, we'll do the magic, click the button, and you'll be one. And then that lets you invite pictures to be part of the Oklahoma Digital Centennial Project. So this is on our website that Enid Public Schools is currently hosting. You can click on Oklahoma County, and that takes you into Google Earth, and then you can explore in detail information about that, and then you can see a digital story. And so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually exit out and play you just a brief example of a digital story, which is about Marquis James and the Cherokee Strip.
Of Jesse James. Yep, the famous outlaw Jesse James. A member of the James Younger gang who robbed banks, stagecoaches, and trains, often hamming it up in front of large crowds. My father was also a Civil War veteran and an attorney who represented many desperate characters on the edge of the law. What brought my family to Oklahoma Territory was my father's participation in the land run of 1893. He staked a claim near what would soon become Enid. Yep, it was the biggest horse race ever run. At the starting line, farther than the eye could see, 100,000 people lined up on saddle horses, light rigs, buckboards, spring wagons, sulkies. The prize, bigger than the state of Massachusetts, was Oklahoma's Cherokee Story. While growing up in the frontier cabin, I met some mighty shady characters from my father's practice, such as Dick Yeager, Bill Doolin, and Jack Dalton. These early experiences formed the basis of one of my books called The Cherokee Story. My mother taught me to read at the age of 4, and I spent hours devouring the books in my own family library, and later at the Enid Public Library. History was my favorite subject, but math and grammar were beyond me. When I add a column of figures and get the correct answer, it is purely by accident, and I am sure I could not name the 8 parts of speech, let alone define them. I graduated in 1909 from Enid High School, where I helped in founding the school publication, The Quit. I do remember my first year in high school being in the top floor of Schiller Hall. The following year, the high school moved to North Independence Street between Oak and Walnut. I began my college at Oklahoma Christian Phillips University. The unexpected death of my father and subsequent need to work to help my mother cut short my college studies. The rest is history, for in 1929 I published my study of Houston, entitled The River. This won me my first Pulitzer Prize in 1930. This winning of the Pulitzer Prize encouraged me to tackle a more substantial work, The Life of Andrew Jackson. The two-volume work, The Border Captain and Portrait of a President, were completed after 7 years, and in 1938, I won my second Pulitzer Prize. Although I had won 2 Pulitzer Prizes, the book I enjoyed writing the most was the Cherokee Story. I always liked to show my old map of the Cherokee Strip. As you can see here, it was 60 miles wide strip of land south of the Oklahoma-Kansas border. It was about 225 miles long, and in 1891 contained 8,144,000 acres. The Cherokee Strip was, in actuality, a 2-mile strip running along the northern border of much of the Cherokee Outlet, and which was a result of a surveying error. Back in my younger years, one of my heroes was Dick Yeager, self-styled biggest outlaw Oklahoma ever had, who eluded 1,000-man posse for 125 days of hot, bloody pursuit. The proudest moment of my hero-worshiping young life was when I marched into jail to shake the mortally wounded outlaw's hand. Dick Yeager was my father's client, and at the time, the most interesting thing about my dad was his clients. Also, my fascination is the Railroad War between North and South Enid. During the Railroad War, Enid was known as the South Town because the Rock Island Railroad used to whistle its trains right through to stop at the company-owned North Town, 3.5 miles away. Red lanterns and dynamite caps on the track failed to stop them. Bullets failed to stop them. Conductors would draw the window blinds and tell passengers to scooch down away from the glass. One night, someone saw the pillars of the trestle, and the freight train went into the south branch of the Boggy Creek. That was the first train stop in Southtown. Well, I'd better stop here, as the train did at Enid. I hope you enjoyed my story about my life in the Cherokee Strip.
Now, did I mention how much it costs to access a digital story like this? It's free, right? This has been created by Mike King as an example of what we can do and what students are being encouraged to do along with teachers. But when we are creating things with media that we have permission to share, it can be publicly shared, and if we have copyright attachments to it, it can be housed within the server so that we can log in and get to it, and that's called digital rights management. What we hope is that these materials are going to be able to be publicly shared. Now, in addition to noting that that's free, when your students create something like that, do you think they want to keep it to themselves and hide it? You know, is repetition important for learning? Is repetition important for learning? It's huge. And when kids make things like that, usually they want to see it over and over again. Oh my gosh, yeah, I guess we're going to have to let you take that home on a CD so you can play it at home. Or we're going to have to burn that to a DVD so you can take that home and see it. Oh gosh, you want to show that to your parents? And you want to show that to your grandparents? And you want to show that to your neighbors? Gosh, okay. We'll see how we can do that. So there's a lot of compelling reasons to get involved with this project. What I would like to do now is turn the microphone over to Erin, and she is with the Oklahoma Heritage Association, and they have been around a lot longer than the Oklahoma Digital Centennial Project, and are going to be around, you know, we hope, and a long time into the future, because that's their goal, is to preserve this history for posterity. And so I'd just like to invite her to tell a little bit about Oklahoma Heritage, some of the educational opportunities that they have, and we're so excited that they're going to host our training. And, I didn't mention this, but on your 4-page handout are instructions if you or others in your school district want to participate, because this is open to anyone. Because of numbers of seats, we have to limit how many folks, but there's an application, and we're excited to be going to OHA in October. So, Erin. Oh, that's right. Let me bring up.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for having me today, and a big thank you to Wes and to AT&T for letting me be here today and tell you a little bit about the association and the new Gaylord Pickens Oklahoma Heritage Center. The Heritage Association is a nonprofit organization. We were founded 80 years ago by Anna B. Korn, who wanted to found an organization that preserved Oklahoma history and promoted pride in our state. And we do that by telling Oklahoma's story through its people. We host the Oklahoma Hall of Fame and have for the past 80 years. That's the state's highest honor, and to date we have about 613 members. We also publish books on Oklahoma history and its people, and we opened the new Gaylord Pickens Oklahoma Heritage Center this year in May. And now I'd like to tell you a little bit about some of our educational programs. We offer scholarships to 9th through 12th graders. We offer almost $500,000 in scholarships every year. All your students have to do to be eligible for this scholarship is take a test on Oklahoma history, and we even provide them a study guide, so it's not too difficult. There are testing locations throughout the state. We'll have about 13 locations this year. Each county has at least 3 $1,000 scholarships. Those are either cash scholarships or tuition grants. Oklahoma County, for example, has at least 15 available, so there are lots of these scholarships out there for your students to win. We also offer the $10,000 Nichols Scholarship. It's a 4-year scholarship that goes to one outstanding high school senior, and they have to be nominated by a teacher to be eligible for that award. This year's test is on April the 5th, and there's more information about the test and the Nichols Scholarship on our website. We are gearing up right now for the Heritage Week competitions. We host these every year. They're for 4th through 12th graders. The younger students participate in our poster competition. The middle students participate in the essay competition, and the older ones in a collage and essay competition. And they're all based on a notable Oklahoman. They can win up to $350 for their winning entry, and they'll also receive a commendation from the governor's office. And this year we'll be doing a very special ceremony in our new building. It will be, I believe, on November the 13th, and those entries are due October the 12th. We'll have sites around the state where your students can drop those off, or they can mail them or bring them to the Heritage Center. This will interest all of you a lot, I hope. We offer 3 educator awards every year, and they're for outstanding teaching in Oklahoma history, and you can win up to $5,000 if you win that award. So if you or anyone you know would like to be nominated for that award, at our booth we have those forms available. The new Oklahoma Heritage Center that we just opened this May, not to be confused with the History Center, which we are very often. We are different from them in that we just focus on Oklahoma's people. So as I tell all teachers who ask me about that difference, I would really encourage you to take your students to both places because they'll get a different view of Oklahoma at each place. All of our exhibits are very high-tech, they use interactive technology, and they were all custom designed for us by a team out of Boston. So you won't see anything else like that anywhere else in the world. Students love it because they can use touch screens and video displays, technology they're really familiar with, to learn more about famous Oklahomans, both past and present. Will Rogers, Wiley Post, Reba McEntire, and I think the kids' personal favorite is Matt Hoffman, who's a BMX bike rider from Edmond, Oklahoma. They can also look up the bios of our 613 Oklahoma Hall of Fame inductees, and they can print off those bios if they need to use them for a school project or anything like that. One of the most exciting exhibits we have is called Tell Your Story, and this offers all of our visitors the opportunity to come in and tell 45 seconds worth of a story about their own heritage. They record that in our recording booths, and then they have the opportunity to save it in our archives for future visitors to see, and they can also email that file to themselves to keep as a souvenir. If you're interested in bringing a field trip, we can customize the questions that we ask, so if there's a certain question you'd like them to answer when they come on a field trip, you can just let us know in advance. Right now, our special exhibit we're showing is called Salt of the Red Earth, A Century of Wit and Wisdom from Oklahoma's Elders, and it features the photographs and quotes from about 30 Oklahomans 100 years or older. And students have really enjoyed that exhibit, and that will be with us through December this year. We offer field trips during the weekdays, Tuesday through Friday, from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Admission is $3 for students, and it's free for any of your adults who come to chaperone them. We are located at Northwest 13th Street and Chartel Avenue, which is just a mile or two away from here. We're in the former Mid-Continent Life Insurance building, and that is near Heritage Hills neighborhood. And directions to the building and more information about our field trips is at oklahomaheritage.com. We do also have pre- and post-visit curriculum available to you. And while you're here, if you haven't already, please come visit our booth. We're at booth 1609. We have more information about all of our educational programs. I can, depending on which grades you're working with, I can give you specific information to each of that. And we are doing wonderful giveaways. We're doing a field trip. We're up to 40 students for free to the new Oklahoma Heritage Center, as well as a series of our Trackmaker book collection. It's a series of about 30 novels on notable Oklahomans. So come by and sign up for those giveaways. And we also have free Oklahoma pencils. And we have some of the wares from our museum store, neat Oklahoma gifts, coloring books, and some educational tools. So thank you all again, and thank you to Wes and AT&T, and please stop by and see us while you're here.
All right. Let's give Aaron a hand. All right, just a couple more comments, and then I want to give you a chance to ask some questions if you have some. I had met at anybody go to the A+ Schools conference? Anybody in an A+ school here? Met one of the vendors there at the A+ Schools conference at the beginning of August, someone from the Metro Library. And I was very excited to hear that they're doing a new initiative called Oklahoma Voices. And I know that's too small to read, but if you've ever heard of StoryCorps, which is an NPR-related initiative where they're going out and just recording the stories of folks out in their neighborhoods, out in their communities. That's what's happening here in Oklahoma County through the Metro Library System. And that is, again, a great related digital centennial initiative that would be great to find out about. How would you find out about that? Well, go to the Metro Library. I just Googled for Oklahoma Voices and found the details about it. But you can also go to our NING, right? Go to celebrateoklahoma.ning.com and you'll find a post about that. There's going to continue to be neat things that are happening this fall. And the opportunity to be plugged into a social network is a real powerful thing, right? Because the knowledge of the group is always going to be greater than the knowledge of the individual. You know, Mike King knows some stuff, Aaron knows some stuff, I know some stuff, you do. But when we put our minds together and we say, hey, did you know about such and such? Isn't that great? It may or may not be something you can physically participate in. You know, the thought I just had was, wouldn't it be cool if kids could create a digital story that qualified them for the scholarship for Oklahoma Heritage? That would be neat. Anyway, there's lots of possibilities, and our desire and I hope desire and need to engage students with digital media and give them this constructive way to cultivate these skills, but also, learn the content skills that we're supposed to be teaching and learning in school is going to be enduring. It's not just going to be something that's important here for this particular year of the centennial. What I would like to do now is give you I'm going to give you 2 minutes. I'm going to start a stopwatch. I've given you a lot of information. I want to give you 2 minutes to respond about what questions you have, and I want you to talk to somebody beside you, and then we're going to take just a few remaining minutes at the end of the session for you to ask those questions, okay? Because there's been a lot of stuff that we've talked about. So I'm going to start a stopwatch. If you're by yourself, you do have to scoot over. This is the part where you talk to your neighbor. You have 2 minutes. Go. All right. If I can get your attention. We've got about 5 or 6 minutes. I want to make 2 comments, and then I'm going to field questions from you. And the first is, does anybody else feel like you have too much to teach and cover? At our leadership conference this past July, the keynote speaker, that's one all the superintendents went to, right? The keynote speaker was the author of Leadership That Works. I'm trying to think of his name. Can you help me with it? Robert Marzano, thank you. And he said that if we were to take all the standards we have in school today, K-12, teach them with the depth and time that they require and deserve, K-12 becomes K-22. Now. Okay, so it's like the elephant in the room. We cannot cover it all. We shouldn't try to. This guy has some important things to say about it. And I point this out because I would not want you to leave here thinking, yeah, that sounds nice and fun, but really the serious work that I'm about is just getting the kids ready for the test. And that stuff maybe we could do in May after the tests are over. Carl Wyman won the Nobel Prize in 2001 in physics. And one of the things that he is passionate about now, as he's moved to the University of British Columbia, if you just Google for Carl Wyman, UBC, he did a presentation called Using the Tools of Science to Teach Science. He says, slow down. Let your students talk with each other. Let them commit to answers. He's using responders in large college classes. But that's just, when you look at the research, do kids that take physics in college remember much physics a year later? Typically they don't. Why? Because they haven't authentically processed those ideas, and they haven't begun to own the ideas. Yeah, they passed the test. It's gone into their short-term memory, but they haven't owned it. And this takes us to digital storytelling. This is a picture of some of the kids at Mabry Middle School who, yes, received a trophy, just like an Academy Award, for the digital stories that they created as 7th graders and 8th graders at their school. This is the same kind of thing that we can and should be doing in our schools today to celebrate the type of work that is of a sufficient quality to be ready for the world. Okay? Some of the most compelling stories I've ever heard a presenter share were told by Tim Tyson this summer about kids who, after the grades were in, okay, they were ready to be mailed out. He had some kids coming back to school to work on their project again. They said, "Don't you understand? The grade is recorded." And they said, "No, Mr. Tyson, Dr. Tyson, I know I got an A on the report. You gave us a challenge at the beginning of this school year that if we created something that was ready for the world, that was at that level of quality, that you would immediately put it into global distribution. And my project isn't ready yet." Holy cow. We're talking about a totally different level of engagement. And this is the kind of thing we can be doing in our schools. So, you all have some questions? Let's talk about it. Yes, ma'am.
It will be rare in our district this year that we are able to go to professional development during the school day.
Right.
It says here, though, that there's regional facilitators. So will they be able to come to our school and do something where we can arrange for them, or perhaps summer?
Absolutely. Our hope is it's a train the trainer idea, and I'm talking with Del City right now about doing something with students. The three sessions we've scheduled here are for teachers, and that's going to be probably, we've done about 12 at a time. It'll be somewhere around 15 or 20 folks, teachers at a time, librarians, teachers. But what we're hoping to do, and one of my visions for this is, what I'm talking with Del City about is, let's do 2 evenings, but each teacher has to bring a student. Okay? And that first session, we're going to learn about it, we're going to see how to do it, and then you're going to go record something and bring some pictures back, and we'll make the story together. You know, the power to use technology and really the motivation to use it is much more with our students than it is with our teachers. And so, yes, the goal is for regional facilitators to offer some training. That's not probably going to be a full 3-day, I miss class and have a sub the whole time sort of situation. It may be an after-school thing repeated. It may be, you know, at a different time. I'm not sure what will work for you. It could be during a professional development time, but we're very much wanting to empower other people to do the training, and again, to create the stories and to share the stories. That's really the key, is making it. And then doing some sustained follow-up so that it's not just something we went and forgot, but it's something that we have opportunities to come back to. And that's where Oklahoma Heritage, we may even do a celebration this fall for digital stories and have prizes and, you know, get money to give away iPods and who knows what else. I mean, that's some stuff we've been talking about. Yes, ma'am.
Can we contact you through the website?
On the 4-page handout, there is information about applying on the website. There, it says online applications open September 1st, and then on the back, there's contact information. Or instead of the back. On the 3rd page, there's contact information for Mike King and also for me, email addresses and phone numbers. And we'll be glad to provide you with more information about, you know, if you can't attend a facilitator training, you know, who is a facilitator in your local area, and would it be possible to have them do this kind of thing. Yeah, summer is one of the best times to do it, right, because there's just not all that other stuff going on. So it'd be a great thing to do regionally next summer. Yes, ma'am.
So do you have to attend the training to have your students submit a video?
No, you absolutely don't. The benefit of going to the training is just that opportunity to learn more about the tools and to have the login and username. What you need to do is get in contact with one of the facilitators, and you could submit it through them, or you could get in contact with Mike or I. So it's not meant to say force everybody to go through this training and participate, but we wanted to have a level of training in order to have more folks that could upload and put content. If you have a single gatekeeper, that can really restrict the ability. I mean, people get busy. If just one person holds the keys to the website, the project might not be as successful. Okay, we have time for another question or two.
I noticed that some of the benefits were the royalty-free music and except the music that we had playing.
We would have to ask Mike that. I'm not sure where that came from. I do sessions on digital music creation and teaching students how to use royalty-free loops and obtain music from copyright, we call copyleft, friendly sites where folks are giving permission for that kind of thing. So we'll have to ask Mike that question. I'm not sure. But we do have the ability, if it is something that's copyrighted or uses, for instance, United Streaming content, for that to be restricted. But our hope is that we're going to be using materials that are out in the public domain or that have a Creative Commons license, and then they can be publicly shared. We don't want anybody to have liability issues and face that. But this brings up those kind of questions, which, believe me, we need to talk about. We need to have an understanding of what can I do, what can I not do legally, and the same for my students.
And how about, if we had old pictures, from our own family? Absolutely. No, this is an initiative. We're focused on K-12 education. But really, if you're a lover of history and a lover of learning and a lover of Oklahoma, that's a timeless love. And so anyone can participate. And many of the folks contributing photos now on Flickr have just found us and have submitted pictures. And so that's a great example. If you have family pictures or just, pictures that are in old albums, you can scan those. Of course, your students could be involved in that. Your students can be talking to folks in the community, collecting those kind of pictures, submitting them, and then getting a story that they're telling. Best way to learn history is from the folks that experienced it, right? So get grandma to tell you a story. And the University of Central Oklahoma is looking at, and we can't say this for sure, but we think may be able to provide some media kits. They won't be iPods, but they're going to be digital recorders with perhaps a digital camera and a microphone, and those will be kits that can then be given out to people participating in the project. A microphone at Walmart is how much? Anybody know? $7, okay? $10, $8. I mean, we're not talking $1,000. And you probably have microphones in your school now. The benefit of having a mobile device, and you can get them now for about $30, is that I no longer am chained to my computer. I can go interview you in the hallway. I can take this home to where grandmother is. I can, go to her house, interview her there. And it's a lot less scary than sticking a video camera in somebody's face. Okay? Because there's no video here, Grandma. We're just recording. Put that down. She forgets it, and then you hear the story. And the pictures, again, can come in later. It's nice to have a picture at the beginning, perhaps, that frames who's talking. That could be a picture of her in her younger days, not a picture today. But you can do both. And then that's called B-roll. I learned that from Marco Torres. A-roll is headshot. Okay? Watch Discovery, watch Science Channel, watch any of these documentaries. Most of the story is told with B-roll images. That's not the person sitting there looking at the camera talking. It's a scene of their house growing up and a scene of the car driving and whatever else keeps the story going. These are real skills we're talking about that kids need. They have some media skills because they live in a media-centric culture, but they're not often invited to be authors and contributors. And if we're really interested in media literacy and 21st century literacy skills, kids can't simply be passive consumers. It's great to watch that video that Mike did. It's infinitely more powerful when your own students create that kind of a media product and then they're edified and celebrated for the work that they've done. So, I think we're out of time. Thank you for coming, and let other people know. We want to have lots of people apply this year to the project.
Moving at the Speed of Creativity podcasts are independently produced and syndicated for a global audience by Wesley Fryer and are shared under a Creative Commons Attribution 2.5 license. Learn more at www.speedofcreativity.org.